Have you ever had a dream that was so clear, so real, you could almost feel it in your bones? A dream you've protected and polished for years? Today, I want to talk about what happens when that dream is on the verge of coming true, but someone you love hands you a grenade and asks you to hold it. This is a story about my wedding, but it's also about family, manipulation, and the discovery that sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves because we so desperately want them to be true. My mother started dating a younger man than her. She then offered me $5,000 for my wedding, but only if he could walk me down the aisle instead of my uncle. When I refused, she threatened to ruin the most important day of my life. And that was just the beginning. The truth behind that $5,000 check was something far, far worse. I've been dreaming about my wedding for as long as I can remember. Not in a perfect princess riding off into the sunset kind of way, but more like picturing a day where all the people I love would come together to celebrate something really special. Something real. It was supposed to be a joyful, heartwarming event. A day filled with laughter, hugs, maybe a few happy tears, and just good vibes all around. A day of pure, uncomplicated happiness. But here I am, a week away from the big day. And instead of feeling excited and over the moon, I'm sitting here drowning in a weird cocktail of anger, sadness, and a crushing sense of guilt. It's the last thing I expected to feel right now, this tangled mess of emotions that keeps me up at night. To understand how we got here, how a dream about unity turned into a battle over one walk down an aisle, you need to understand my mom. And to understand my mom, well, you have to understand her lifelong, complicated, and often destructive relationship with money. Okay, let me rewind a little so this all makes sense. I'm 28, and my fiancé Nathan and I have been together for 3 years. He's honestly my person, the kind of partner who doesn't just say, "I support you," but shows it by bringing you coffee just the way you like it during a stressful work week, or by listening for hours while you vent without ever trying to fix it. He's the one who taught me what unconditional love actually feels like, without any hidden clauses or fine print. We've been planning this wedding for over a year. We're not exactly swimming in money, but we've saved up enough to make it a day we're proud of. Nothing over the top, just a simple, elegant ceremony followed by a cozy reception with our closest friends and family. From the start, we made it clear that we weren't expecting anyone to chip in financially, especially not my family. Walking me down the aisle would be my Uncle Robert. He's been my rock ever since my dad passed away 15 years ago. I still remember the day after the funeral. I was sitting alone in my room, and the silence was deafening. He just came in, sat on the edge of my bed, and didn't say a word. He just sat with me for an hour, and for the first time, the silence didn't feel empty anymore. He's the one who taught me how to drive, who helped me with my college applications, the one I call when my car makes a weird noise. He's been a father to me in every way that counts. For me, having him walk me down the aisle wasn't even a question. It was the only thing that felt right. That said, there's a bit of history here with my mom that has been bubbling under the surface for years. Money has always been a sore spot with her. On one hand, she's constantly telling me how broke she is. On the other, her spending habits tell a very different story. Designer handbags? Check. Fancy dinners at places where appetizers cost as much as my weekly groceries? Yep. But it wasn't just spending. My mom has always had this weakness for get-rich-quick schemes. I remember the miracle skincare multi-level marketing thing that cost her thousands, or the revolutionary crypto coin a friend of a friend recommended that vanished into thin air. It was a cycle of financial highs followed by devastating lows, and she was always the victim of a bad break or a dishonest partner. As a kid, it was confusing, but now, as an adult, I see it as a pattern of seeking easy solutions for deep-seated problems. So, when Nathan and I got engaged, I had my expectations set to zero when it came to her and money. Or so I thought. Her reaction still managed to surprise me. Instead of being over the moon excited for me, her first response was to apologize, saying how sorry she was that she couldn't help pay for the wedding. I immediately told her it was fine, and I really meant it. Her emotional support was what mattered. Over the months, though, she kept bringing it up, these little passive-aggressive reminders of her financial struggles. It felt less like an apology and more like she was preemptively building a wall against any expectations. And for months, that was the rhythm of it. a steady beat of wedding planning on my end and financial complaints on hers. It was predictable, annoying, but predictable. Until about 2 months ago. That's when everything shifted. That's when Kyle entered the picture. Out of nowhere, my mom started dating him. She's 53 and he's 30, and the change in her was immediate and dramatic. It was like someone had flipped a switch. The constant complaints about money stopped. Suddenly, she was glowing. She told me Kyle wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a life strategist and a brilliant entrepreneur who was helping her get her finances in order. She talked about him in these grand, sweeping terms, like he was a hero who had rescued her. My Aunt Sarah, my mom's younger sister, called me, gushing. "I've never seen your mother this happy," she said, her voice full of genuine excitement. "Honestly, this Kyle guy is amazing. He's helping her with investments, planning for her retirement. He treats her like a queen. I think this is finally it for her." Everyone was telling me this was the best thing to ever happen to my mom, a smart, ambitious younger man who adored her and was helping her build a secure future. It sounded like a fairy tale. So why did I have this cold, sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach? A feeling that told me this perfect new chapter was about to become the darkest one yet. A feeling that I was about to meet this man, and that nothing would ever be the same. My mom insisted that Nathan and I have dinner with her and Kyle. "I want you to get to know him properly," she'd said on the phone, her voice brimming with a kind of giddy excitement I hadn't heard in years. Not just as my boyfriend, but as a part of the family. The phrase hung in the air, feeling less like an invitation and more like a declaration. I agreed, mostly to keep the peace. Nathan, ever the diplomat, said it was a great idea. She picked a restaurant I would never have chosen. It was one of those downtown places with white tablecloths, a wine list thicker than a novel, and an intimidatingly quiet atmosphere. It was her territory, not mine. As Nathan and I sat waiting, I twisted my napkin in my lap. "Just be open-minded," Nathan whispered, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze under the table. "For your mom." I nodded, trying to unclench my jaw. I felt like I was preparing for a job interview I desperately didn't want. Then they walked in, and my first thought was, okay, this is not what I expected. I had pictured someone flashy, maybe a little loud, dripping in designer logos. But Kyle was the opposite. He was dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, no tie, looking effortlessly chic and understated. He was handsome, I had to admit, with a warm, easy smile that seemed to reach his eyes. He shook Nathan's hand firmly, looking him directly in the eye. "Nathan, it's a real pleasure. I've heard so much about your work in software development. Your mom is so proud." He had disarmed my protector in under 10 seconds. Then, he turned to me. His smile softened. "And you must be the bride-to-be. You're even more lovely than your mother described." It was a standard compliment, but the way he said it felt genuine. He handed me a small, beautifully wrapped gift. "This is just a little something. Your mom mentioned you were a huge fan of classic literature." I opened it. Inside was a first-edition copy of my favorite book. It was a thoughtful, specific, and incredibly expensive gesture. I was completely thrown off balance. Thank you," I stammered. "This is too much." "Nonsense," he said, waving it off as he sat down. "It's a celebration." The rest of the dinner was a masterclass in charm. He expertly steered the conversation, asking Nathan insightful questions about his latest project. He turned to me and didn't just ask about the wedding. He asked about the little details, about my color palette, my choice of flowers. At one point, he mentioned a community garden project I'd volunteered for years ago, something I'd almost forgotten. "Your mom told me about that," he said. "She said you basically built it from the ground up. It takes a special kind of person to create something for a whole community." I found myself actually laughing at his jokes. He was witty, intelligent, and he had this incredible ability to make everyone at the table feel like they were the most interesting person in the room. All the while, my mom just watched him, her face full of adoration. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw that the happiness Aunt Sarah had described was real. She was radiant, and that made me feel even worse. This man was, by all appearances, perfect. He was kind, generous, and clearly made my mother incredibly happy. So why was my internal alarm bell still ringing? a low, persistent hum beneath the surface of the polite dinner conversation. Was I the problem? Was I so used to my mom's drama that I couldn't accept her happiness when it was right in front of her? As we left the restaurant, Kyle put a hand on my shoulder. "I just want you to know," he said, his voice low and sincere, "I'm here to support your mom, which means I'm here to support you. Whatever you need for this wedding, just consider it done." It sounded so kind, so why did it feel like a threat? A few days passed, and I convinced myself I had overreacted. I was just being cynical. I decided to let it go and focus on the final wedding preparations. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my mom called. "Hey, honey, I'm nearby. Just want to drop something off for the wedding." Before I could respond, she'd hung up. 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find her standing there, beaming, with Kyle right behind her. He was holding a large, elegant gift bag from a high-end department store. My stomach tightened. The unannounced visit with backup was a classic move. "Mom, hey, I was just in the middle of working on the seating chart," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh, this will only take a second," she said, bustling past me into the living room. Kyle followed, placing the bag on the coffee table with a quiet smile. My mom's hands were trembling slightly as she pulled a thick, cream-colored envelope from her purse and handed it to me. "This is for you and Nathan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I opened it. Inside was a check. My eyes widened as I read the number. $5,000. For our wedding, that wasn't just a gift. It was a game changer. That was the honeymoon we'd postponed. That was paying off the caterer without dipping into our emergency fund. I just stared at it, speechless. "Mom, I don't know what to say," I finally managed. "You don't have to say anything," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "It's all thanks to Kyle. He's helped me make some really smart financial moves, and for the first time in years, I feel secure. I feel like I can finally be the mother you deserve." She took a deep breath, and here it came, the real reason for the visit. "There's just one thing I want to ask," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "It would mean the world to me. Your father, he isn't here to see his beautiful daughter get married, and I know no one can ever replace him. But Kyle, he's become such a pillar of strength for me, for what I hope will be our new family. He represents a new beginning." I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew what was coming. "I want Kyle to walk you down the aisle," she finished, the words hanging in the air like poison. The room was silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Kyle, who had been standing by quietly, stepped forward. He looked down at the floor and shook his head slightly, as if he were embarrassed. "Honey, we talked about this," he said softly to my mom. "It's too much to ask. It's her special day. Robert is a wonderful man, and it's his place." He turned his kind, concerned eyes to me. "I would be honored, truly, but this is your decision. We will respect whatever you choose." He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. In one move, he had made himself seem like the humble, reasonable one, a reluctant participant in my mother's grand idea. He had successfully framed this as a conflict between my mother's feelings and my own, with him as the innocent, supportive bystander. My mind was racing, a chaotic whirlwind of thoughts. The check in my hand felt like it was burning a hole through the paper. $5,000. Then I pictured Uncle Robert, his face when I'd asked him to walk me down the aisle, the way his eyes had teared up. I thought of him sitting in my silent room 15 years ago. I took a deep breath and found my voice. It came out steadier than I felt. "Mom," I began, choosing my words carefully. This is an incredibly generous offer. I'm speechless. Thank you, but I can't. Uncle Robert is walking me down the aisle. We've been planning this for years. It means everything to both of us." The change was instantaneous. The soft, hopeful light in my mother's eyes vanished, replaced by a hard, cold fury. The mask of the loving mother shattered. "Ungrateful," she hissed, the words sharp and low. "After everything I do for you, everything I am trying to build for us, I should have known." This isn't about being ungrateful, I pleaded. This is about Uncle Robert. This has nothing to do with your Uncle Robert, she snapped, her voice rising. This is about you rejecting me, rejecting my happiness. You see, Kyle, she said, turning to him with a look of tragic vindication. I told you, she won't accept you. She never will. She lives in the past. She'd rather hold on to a ghost than embrace a future where her mother is finally happy and supported. I stood there, stunned into silence by the sheer venom in her voice. Kyle stepped forward and gently put his arm around my mother's shoulders. He looked at me, his face a perfect mask of sorrow and pity. Pity for me. It's okay, darling, he murmured to my mom. I told you it was a bad idea. Let's not ruin this. We should go. With a slow, deliberate movement, he reached out and gently took the envelope, the $5,000 check from my numb fingers. His touch was light, but it felt like a final, definitive act. He was taking back the money, the hope, the peace offering. He was taking it all back. He guided my sobbing mother to the door, and then they were gone. The door clicked shut, and the silence they left behind was absolute. I was left standing alone in my living room, my hands empty, the echo of her words ringing in my ears. I wasn't just out $5,000. I felt like I had just been handed a bill for my mother's happiness, and the price was my soul. The silence in the apartment was so absolute it felt like a physical presence. I just stood there, staring at the door, replaying the last 10 minutes in my head. The calculated kindness, the performative humility, my mother's raw, theatrical fury. It was a perfectly executed ambush. Nathan found me a few minutes later, still standing in the exact same spot. He took one look at my face, then wrapped his arms around me. You did the right thing, he said, his voice firm. 100% you did the right thing. Don't you dare question that. Hearing him say it, so simply and with such conviction, was like an anchor in a hurricane. It didn't stop the pain, but it stopped the spinning. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words, ungrateful, rejecting my happiness, holding on to a ghost, were on a loop in my brain. In the lonely, quiet hours before dawn, I did something I'd never done before. I opened up my laptop, went to a popular online forum, and I wrote it all down. The whole messy, complicated story. I didn't do it for drama or for sympathy. I did it because I felt like I was losing my mind, and I needed an outside perspective. I needed to know, truly, was I the villain my mother had painted me to be? When I woke up the next morning, my post had hundreds of comments. I started reading, and it was like a fog began to lift. A chorus of voices, strangers from all over the world, were saying the same things. Red flags, love bombing, financial abuse, gaslighting. They pointed out how Kyle had expertly isolated me, how my mother's reaction was a classic manipulation tactic, designed to make me feel guilty for setting a boundary. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel crazy. I felt seen, and that feeling gave me the courage to do something I probably should have done from the beginning. I started digging. It was almost too easy to find him. Kyle had a slick, professional-looking social media profile. The profile picture showed him laughing on a sailboat, the very image of success and carefree living. His feed was a curated collection of inspirational business quotes, photos from what looked like charity galas, and selfies with my beaming mother, captioned with things like, "Finding your soulmate is a journey, not a destination. So grateful for my co-pilot." The comments were all from a small circle of adoring, recently added friends, mostly women my mother's age. "You two are an inspiration," one wrote. "So happy for you both," another chimed in. It was all perfect. A little too perfect. I kept scrolling, looking for a crack in the facade. I scrolled back a month, then 2, then 6, and then I hit the end. His entire online presence, photos, posts, friendships, had begun exactly 6 months ago. Before that, it was a void. There were no tagged photos from college buddies, no awkward family vacation pictures from 10 years ago, no digital footprint whatsoever. It wasn't a profile. It was a carefully constructed resume for the role of the perfect man. A cold dread washed over me. This man hadn't just appeared in my mother's life. He had been created. I needed to talk to someone who knew my mom, someone who might see what I was seeing. I called Aunt Sarah. I explained what I'd found, my voice probably sounding more frantic than I intended. His profile is brand new, Aunt Sarah. There's nothing on him before 6 months ago. Doesn't that seem weird to you? She sighed on the other end of the line, a sound of weary patience that I knew all too well. Honey, you're spiraling, she said, her tone condescendingly gentle. So he deleted his old social media? Lots of people do that. It's called privacy. Maybe he had a bad breakup and wanted a fresh start. You're looking for problems where there aren't any because you just can't stand to see your mother happy without you being the center of her world. I tried to argue, to explain the weird feeling he gave me, the manipulation, but she cut me off. You need to let this go, she said firmly. For your mother's sake. I hung up feeling more alone than ever. The next day, my phone rang. The caller ID said Joan, my mom's best friend of over 20 years. Joan was the opposite of my Aunt Sarah. She was down to earth, no nonsense, and had a built-in lie detector that was second to none. Hey, she said, and I could tell immediately from her hesitant tone that this wasn't a social call. I have to tell you something, and I don't want to cause trouble, but I'm worried. I'm really worried about your mom. I sat down. What is it, Joan? I saw her yesterday, she began. I was driving past that big pawn shop over on Franklin Avenue, and I saw her car in the parking lot. I thought it was strange, so I circled back and parked across the street. I waited for a bit and... Honey, I saw her come out. She looked... hunted, you know? Like she was afraid someone would see her. I've known her for 20 years, and I've never seen her look like that. My heart started pounding. What was she doing there, Joan? Joan took a deep breath. This is the part I feel awful about. A few minutes earlier, before she came out, my curiosity got the better of me. I went in. I pretended I was looking at some rings in the display case. And I saw her. She was at the back counter. Her back was to me, but I saw what she was putting on the counter. It was that gold necklace. The one your dad gave her for their 10th anniversary. The one with the little diamond chips. There's no mistaking it. The world tilted on its axis. That necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was a relic. It was one of the few tangible pieces of my father I had left. My mom had always said she would be buried in it. For her to sell it, it meant things were dire. The charm, the social media profile, the $5,000 check that wasn't real. It was all clicking into place, and the picture it formed was terrifying. I thanked Joan, my voice a hoarse whisper, and hung up. I didn't think. I just acted. I grabbed my car keys and drove to my mother's house. I hammered on the door, my mind a blank slate of pure, cold fury. She opened it, a look of annoyance on her face that quickly turned to defensiveness when she saw it was me. What do you want? She asked, blocking the doorway. I know about the necklace, Mom, I said, my voice shaking. I know you sold it. Her face paled, then flushed with anger. You're having me followed now? Is that it? You and Joan whispering behind my back, spying on me? I can't believe this. No one is spying on you. Joan was worried. I'm worried. Why would you sell Dad's necklace? Are you in trouble? Is Kyle making you do this? Leave Kyle out of this, she shrieked. He has nothing to do with this. He's the only one who understands me, the only one who supports me. Supports you by letting you sell off your most precious memories for cash? What kind of support is that? You want to know why I sold it? She screamed, her face contorted with rage. I sold it because it's part of a past that is holding me back, a past you are desperately trying to chain me to. Kyle is my future. In fact, she stopped, a strange, triumphant glint in her eyes. She slowly raised her left hand, and my blood ran cold. On her ring finger was a large, gaudy diamond ring I had never seen before. It was flashy, ostentatious, and looked completely out of place on her hand. He's my fiancé, she said, her voice dripping with defiant pride. We're getting married. I just stared at her, at the ring, the words not computing in my brain. Engaged? To a man she'd known for 2 months? A man who was a digital ghost? She saw the shock on my face and took it as a victory. He loves me enough to commit to me forever, she said, her voice low and cutting. Can you say the same? Or are you just going to keep trying to sabotage the one good thing in my life? And with that, she slammed the door in my face. I was left standing on her porch, the sound of the deadbolt clicking into place echoing in the sudden silence. The problem wasn't that my mom had a new boyfriend. It was that she had joined a cult of two, and he was its leader. And she had just pledged her entire life to him. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The image of that gaudy ring on my mother's finger was burned into my mind. It wasn't just a ring. It was a symbol, a declaration of war against logic, against her family, against her own past. It was a handcuff disguised as a jewel. As soon as I got inside my apartment, I collapsed onto the sofa, the fight draining out of me and leaving a hollow, terrifying emptiness. I called the only person I knew who could possibly understand the gravity of the situation. I called Uncle Robert. I didn't even say hello. The moment he answered, I just choked out, "She's engaged to him," and burst into tears. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line, and then his voice, calm and solid as oak. "Okay," he said. "Stay put. Don't call her again. Don't text her. I'm handling this." He didn't ask questions. He didn't need details. He understood. An hour later, he called back. "I've spoken with Linda," he said, referring to my mom's sister, the eternal diplomat of the family. "She's just as worried as we are. We're going to talk to her, together. All three of us. Tomorrow." The new plan wasn't just about my wedding anymore. This was an intervention. We were no longer trying to win an argument. We were trying to save my mother from a man who was clearly a predator. We met at Aunt Linda's house. It was neutral territory, filled with the scent of lemon furniture polish and the quiet ticking of a grandfather clock. My mom was already there when I arrived. She sat stiffly on a floral armchair, a purse clutched in her lap like a shield. She wouldn't look at me. Kyle was nowhere to be seen, a small mercy. Aunt Linda began, her voice gentle and measured. "We're not here to attack you," she said softly. "We're here because we love you and we're worried. Things are moving very, very fast." My mom immediately went on the defensive. "So this is what it's come to? An ambush? You've all ganged up on me? All because I'm finally happy for the first time in my life?" Uncle Robert leaned forward, his voice firm but not unkind. "This isn't about your happiness," he said. "We all want you to be happy. This is about the facts. A man with no past appears out of nowhere. Within 2 months, you're selling family heirlooms and now you're engaged? Don't you see how that looks?" "It looks like love," she cried, her voice cracking. "Something none of you seem to understand. Kyle sees me for who I am. He doesn't judge my past financial mistakes. He believes in me. He thinks I'm smart and capable." "Then why did you have to sell Dad's necklace?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. That's when she turned on me, her eyes blazing. "You. This is all because of you. You've had them all wrapped around your little finger since your father died. You can't stand that I have someone who puts me first." She looked at Uncle Robert. "And you're just like him, always trying to control me, always questioning my judgment. He did it with the checkbook, and you're doing it with my heart. Kyle is the only one who lets me be free." The room fell silent, the accusation hanging heavy and toxic in the air. We were getting nowhere. She had an answer for everything, a defensive wall so high we couldn't see over it. She was utterly, completely under his spell. Finally, after what felt like hours of circular arguments and tearful accusations, Aunt Linda tried a different tactic. She knelt in front of my mom's chair. "Okay," she said, her voice exhausted. "Let's put Kyle aside for just one day. For 24 hours. Your only daughter is getting married in 5 days. It's a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Can you, for her, just be her mother for that one day? Come to the wedding, alone. Let Robert walk her down the aisle, as you all planned for years. No drama, no conditions. After the wedding is over, your life is your own. We won't say another word, but please, don't let this ruin her day. Can you do that for her?" My mother looked at her sister, then at Uncle Robert, then her eyes flickered towards me for a fraction of a second. She was cornered, and she knew it. She took a long, shuddering breath. "Fine," she whispered, the word barely audible. "Fine, I'll be there. Alone." The feeling in the room wasn't relief. It was a ceasefire, a fragile, temporary truce in a war that was far from over, but for me, it was a tiny sliver of hope I could cling to. The next few days were a blur of last-minute wedding tasks. I threw myself into the preparations, trying desperately to recapture the joy and excitement I had lost. I was at my final dress fitting, standing on the little pedestal in front of the three-way mirror when Uncle Robert showed up. He just stood in the doorway for a moment, watching me. "Well," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you look just like your mother did on her wedding day." He walked over and handed me a small, worn velvet box. "I want you to have these," he said. I opened it. Inside, nestled on the faded satin, were a pair of simple, elegant silver cufflinks. "They were your dad's," he explained. "He wore them the day he got married. He was so nervous he spilled coffee all down the front of his shirt 10 minutes before the ceremony. I had to run out and buy him a new one." He smiled at the memory. "He would have been so incredibly proud of the woman you've become. He would have wanted a piece of him to be with you when you walked down that aisle." I started to cry, right there in the bridal shop. They weren't just cufflinks, they were a reminder of what real, unconditional love looked like. It was a promise of what I had with Nathan, and it was everything I was fighting to protect. It's the night before my wedding. I'm in a hotel suite with my bridesmaids. They're laughing, telling stories, drinking champagne. The room is filled with joy and excitement, and for the first time in weeks, I've allowed myself to believe everything might just be okay. The truce is holding. My mom has been quiet. Maybe, just maybe, we can get through tomorrow. I'm starting to feel like a bride. Then my phone, sitting on the nightstand, buzzes. It's a text from my mom. My heart plummets. 11:15 p.m. I'm so sorry. My fingers tremble as I stare at the screen. Another buzz. 11:17 p.m. It's all my fault. I can feel the panic rising in my chest, cold and sharp. The laughter in the room fades to a distant murmur. 11:28 p.m. Kyle said he needed the money for a last-chance opportunity, an investment deal that couldn't wait. I gave it all to him. My breath catches in my throat. All of what? All of what little she had left? 11:29 p.m. He said he'd be right back. Another message, this one coming 15 agonizing minutes after the last. 11:45 p.m. He's not answering his phone. I stared at my phone, the screen glowing in the darkened hotel room. The laughter of my friends, which had been a comforting buzz just moments before, now sounded jarring and distant, like it was coming from another world. I showed the screen to Nathan. He read the texts, his face hardening. He pulled me into the hallway, away from the celebration. For the rest of the night, we tried to call her, over and over. Each call went straight to voicemail, a cheerful, recorded version of my mother's voice that felt like a cruel joke. I sent text after text. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay? Please just tell me you're safe." All of them disappearing into a digital abyss with no reply. I didn't sleep a single minute that night. The morning of my wedding dawned gray and overcast, a perfect mirror of my mood. The hairstylist, the makeup artist, my bridesmaids, they all moved around me in a flurry of cheerful activity, a well-meaning but oblivious whirlwind. I felt like a doll being prepped for a performance, my body present but my mind a million miles away, stuck in a dark loop of panic and dread. With every passing hour, the hope that she would show up dwindled, replaced by a sickening certainty that she was gone, that Kyle had taken her, or that she was in some kind of trouble. I clutched my phone in my hand, hidden in the folds of my dress, waiting for a call that never came. It was time. My bridesmaids lined up. The music swelled from inside the chapel, and Uncle Robert appeared at my side, his eyes full of concern. "Whatever happens in there," he whispered, squeezing my arm, "is about you and Nathan. Nothing else matters." I nodded, trying to hold back the tears that would ruin my makeup. As the doors opened, I took a shaky breath and prepared to walk into a future where my mother was a ghost. And then I saw her. She wasn't in the front row, where the mother of the bride was supposed to sit. She was in the very last pew, huddled in the corner by herself. She was still wearing the clothes she'd had on the day before. Her hair was a mess, her face was pale and tear-stained, and she looked smaller than I had ever seen her, utterly broken. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second across the length of the chapel, and in her gaze, I saw a universe of shame and despair. Then she looked away. The music started. Uncle Robert put my hand in the crook of his arm, his grip steady and sure. "I've got you," he murmured. And as we began that long walk down the aisle, a strange sense of peace washed over me. The chaos of the last few weeks, the drama, the fear, it all faded away. The only thing I could see was Nathan, waiting for me at the altar, his eyes shining. This moment, right here, was real. This was the sanctuary. This was my victory. The ceremony was beautiful. We said our vows, our voices ringing with a certainty that felt defiant in the face of all the uncertainty. The reception was a blur of toasts, dancing, and heartfelt hugs from people who genuinely loved us. Through it all, I was acutely aware of my mother, a silent, sorrowful specter at a table in the back. She didn't speak to anyone. She didn't eat. And then, sometime after the cake was cut, I looked over and she was gone. She had slipped out without a goodbye, vanishing as quietly as she had appeared. The next morning, Nathan and I were packing for our small honeymoon, a quiet weekend at a cabin by the lake. We were exhausted, but we were married. We had made it. I was just zipping up my suitcase when my phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. Her voice was quiet and heavy. "Honey," she said, "you need to come over to my house. It's about your mom. It's much, much worse than we thought." We found my mother on Aunt Linda's sofa, wrapped in a thick blanket, staring at a blank television screen. She looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. Aunt Linda made us sit down, and then she told us the full story, her voice cracking with a mixture of anger and grief. "He didn't just take her savings," Linda said, her eyes fixed on me. "That was just the beginning. Honey, he convinced her to take out a second mortgage on the house." The words didn't make sense. "What?" I asked, confused. "He created a fake company, fake investment documents, everything. He told her it was a once-in-a-lifetime real estate opportunity that would set her up for life. She signed the papers last week. The loan money was deposited into a new joint account. The $5,000 check he gave you? That was the first withdrawal. It wasn't a gift. It was bait. It was a tool to try and buy his way into your wedding, to prove to your mom that he was part of the family." She paused, taking a deep breath. "The night before your wedding, he drained the entire account, $200,000, and then he disappeared." I looked over at my mother, this small, broken woman huddled on the couch, and for the first time, all the anger I had felt for weeks was gone, replaced by a wave of profound, heartbreaking pity. She hadn't just been foolish, she had been the victim of a meticulous, cruel, and devastating deception. Nathan stood up. "Unpack the car," he said to me softly but firmly. "We're not going anywhere. The police have been called. Lawyers are involved. They say the chances of getting the money back are almost zero, and the battle to save her house will be long and brutal. But in the midst of the wreckage, something shifted. My mother, with nothing left to lose, finally agreed to start therapy. My wedding wasn't the fairy tale I dreamed of as a little girl. It was messy and painful and complicated. But it was real. It was a testament to the love that endures, the family you choose, and the strength you find when everything falls apart. This is our new beginning. The road to healing is long, but for the first time, we're all walking it together.